Welcome to Phantom Radar Battalion, locking on to today's key events of August 1st, 2024. Let's dive into the most pressing global developments across different regions. The Middle East continues to be a hotspot for geopolitical tensions. Hezbollah has resumed operations against Israel following a 2-day mourning hiatus. Shlomi and Hanita settlements have come under rocket strike from Lebanon. This resumption of hostilities is unrelated to the assassination in Beirut, but adds to the already volatile situation. Hezbollah claims responsibility for this evening's rocket fire on the Western Galilee, marking their first attack in over 48 hours. About 60 missiles were fired, with 15 intercepted by the Iron Dome. The Israeli Air Force destroyed the platform from which rockets were launched towards Western Galilee, as confirmed by the Israeli army. Meanwhile, the Iranian Fars agency reports that Israel planned and executed the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh. President Biden spoke with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, discussing the recent escalation. Artillery shelling targeted Aita al-Shab in southern Lebanon, and the Nusayrat camp in the central Gaza Strip was hit by Israeli artillery. Airstrikes also targeted the Al-Zaharna building in Gaza City. Iran is leading the initial response against Israel, coordinating with allies in Iraq, Yemen, and Syria. Civilian targets will be attacked first, followed by a second wave from Hezbollah. This strategy indicates a significant escalation in the conflict. Jordan has issued a NOTAM requiring all flights to the country to carry an additional 45 minutes of fuel for operational reasons, highlighting the increasing regional tension. Top Iranian officials are set to meet representatives of Iran's regional allies from Lebanon, Iraq, and Yemen to discuss potential retaliation against Israel after the killing of the Hamas leader in Tehran. This meeting underscores the broader regional implications of the recent violence. In Syria, pro-Assad forces have shelled the vicinity of Takhad village in Idlib countryside with heavy artillery. Additionally, an Israeli bombing on a house in the town of Shama in southern Lebanon killed 3 displaced Syrians. The Turkish armed forces hit SDF positions in the village of Tawil on the Tel Tamer line with artillery fire. Assad's forces also bombarded the forest of Benin village in the southern countryside of Idlib. Unrest continues in Venezuela, with substantial information warfare efforts shaping the perception of events on the ground. Mass arrests of groups responsible for counter-Maduro unrest have been reported, but some military commanders have voiced opposition to Maduro, complicating the situation. General unrest persists in major cities, with businesses in Caracas operating with fewer products than usual. Increased potential for banditry on remote roads has caused long-haul cargo drivers to refuse to drive, and public transportation routes are disrupted. The economic struggles in Venezuela are further exacerbated by international sanctions and the government's tight control over natural resources. Inflation remains rampant, and access to basic necessities is increasingly limited. The humanitarian crisis is deepening, with many Venezuelans fleeing to neighboring countries in search of better opportunities and stability. In the United Kingdom, the assailant who murdered 3 children and wounded many others in Southport has been identified as Axel Mugan Ruda Cubana. The judge ruled to deny a protection order regarding the assailant's identity due to Ruda Cubana turning 18 years old on August 7th. This identification has sparked further unrest, with public outrage over the handling of the case and the perceived inadequacies in the justice system. The government's response to these incidents has been heavily scrutinized, with calls for more effective community engagement and policy reforms to address the underlying issues. The Southport incident has sparked a broader debate about public safety and immigration policy in the UK. In Africa, conflicts continue to plague several regions, exacerbating humanitarian crises and destabilizing local economies. In the Horn of Africa, Clashes between ethnic groups in Ethiopia have resulted in numerous casualties and displaced thousands of people. The government's efforts to mediate and resolve these conflicts have so far been insufficient, leading to calls for international intervention. In the Sahel region, extremist groups continue to pose a significant threat, carrying out attacks on civilian and military targets. These groups exploit the region's political instability and economic hardships, recruiting disaffected youths and expanding their influence. Regional governments, with support from international partners, are working to enhance security measures and address the root causes of extremism, but progress remains slow and challenging. On the home front, Kamala Harris, after reading a brief statement from her binder, ignored questions from the press. This lack of engagement has raised concerns, as she has not taken questions or held press conferences since Biden was forced off the ballot. In Virginia, an ammonia leak at a food processing facility in Sterling caused significant injuries. 26 employees of Cuisine Solutions were hospitalized for ammonia exposure, with 4 experiencing severe symptoms. Authorities indicated the cause of the leak was the failure of a relief valve on an ammonia tank. Indications of potential Israeli combat operations in Lebanon are mounting. The U.S. Embassy in Beirut is preparing for possible unrest involving U.S. citizens, urging them to enroll in the STEP program and prepare to shelter in place if evacuation via commercial aviation is not available. Several airlines have already delayed or canceled flights into Beirut due to the risks of a widening conflict. Analysts suggest that the strategic situation in the Middle East is highly volatile, with Israeli ground operations in Lebanon appearing increasingly likely. Over the past few weeks, airstrikes from Israel and rocket strikes by Hezbollah have intensified in the Golan Heights, suggesting a de facto state of war. The international community is bracing for potential large-scale ground operations by Israel in Lebanon, which would be markedly different from the conflict in Gaza. The ongoing geopolitical shifts, including the BRICS nations' efforts to establish an alternative to SWIFT, signify significant changes in the global economic landscape. The reduction of dollar dependence among major economies could have far-reaching implications for international financial systems. These developments are closely monitored by financial analysts and policymakers, as they could reshape global trade dynamics and economic alliances. That's all for today's briefing. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more news and insights.